Good morning. We're here today to talk about insects in some more. We've talked about how to find them, how to take pictures of them, how to report them to um, iNaturalist, but I haven't really talked a whole lot about insects themselves. And so today we're going to spend some time uh, trying to get down to the nitty gritty of finding some bugs. And so we're going to ask the question, what exactly is an insect? And one of the things that you'll notice is that we've said all along that we're actually looking for things at the arthropod level. Arthropods include insects, but there are several other organisms with hard chitinous outer shells and jointed legs, which also fall into the arthropod category. And if we look at them all together, you can see that spiders and mites are not insects. Centipedes and millipedes are not insects. Crabs and lobsters are not insects, but they're all arthropods. And so some of them have been showing up on our page. And part of the reason for that is because we didn't want to put anybody in the position of having to know exactly what an insect was or how to tell them apart. Finally, you get to the hexapods, the six-legged organisms, which include insects. But even in that group, there's a group of sort of proto-insects called springtails, which you can find if you go looking under logs and things. I'm kind of surprised that one or the other of our observers hasn't done that yet. But but you are going to find spiders on in the pile of observations we have. Here's a goldenrod crab spider photo taken by David Bailey, and you can see there that it's got some cryptic coloration going on there. It's trying to look like the flower. It's picked. Goldenrod crab spiders come in white, and they come in yellow. The yellow ones are hard to see in yellow, and the white ones are hard to see in white. But they're both the same species, and it's just two different color morphs. But they've got 8 legs, so they're not insects. Here's a signal crayfish, also on the list, or popped up on the list. Lee Kane took a picture of the of this guy, and it's too many legs. This is a crustacean. Crustaceans are also arthropods, but they're not insects. And then we have this crustacean here. Chances are in your yard you've got a couple of woodlice walking around the margins of your the foundation of your house, or in the compost heap or something like that. They're actually pretty common in the backyard. Not an insect, but again, we don't. We're trying to keep things simple here and not make you have to figure out whether it's an insect or not. And so you might run across a millipede. Millipedes, not insects, too many legs. Millipedes and centipedes have lots of legs. That's what they're famous for. Although millipedes don't have thousands of legs and centipedes don't have hundreds of legs, they do have an awful lot of legs. But they're not insects. But you might run across this critter right here. This critter kind of looks like a millipede too. It's got segments like a millipede. It looks like it's got extra legs. And so you ask yourself, well, is that a millipede or is that an insect? It turns out this is an insect. And we wouldn't want you to pass this up or not be able to ask us what it is because it doesn't pop up, because we've set the filter too tight and only the insects are popping up. So you take a picture of something you really want to know about, and we can't help you. So even if that's why we set the filter so broadly, is so that when you're out in the field having fun taking pictures, you don't have to think about whether it's really an insect or not, and whether it'll come up on the post or not. We wanted all of those things to pop up, and then we can answer the questions from the photos. The other thing that we run into every once in a while is that sometimes a non-insect is looking so much like an insect that it fools you. And so here we have an ant at the top. That's an insect, 6 legs. And then we have a spider at the bottom, which has adapted itself to look like a spider so that it can crawl around in spider colonies and have lunch undetected. A lot of these species, we find a lot of species that are imitating other species, insects from one group, imitating insects from another group, and then there are quite a few of these non-insects that have characteristics that make them look like insects so that they can hide in plain sight. This particular spider mimic is not, I don't think it's a native one here, but we do have a couple of native ones that are in the jumping spider group, but they're too fast for me to catch with cameras. I've never been able to catch one on camera. And so we're stuck with stealing a photo from Wikipedia. So you get yourself an insect. Insects are supposed to have a segmented body. Those segments are broken up into 3 different larger sort of super segment bits, the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The abdomen has quite a few segments attached to it. The thorax, all of those segments have been fused together as well. The legs, it has 3 pair of legs, all attached to the thorax, and 2 pair of wings attached to the thorax. So that's what an insect is supposed to be like, and then there's all sorts of exceptions to the rule. Insects that don't appear to have any legs, insects that only have 2 pair of legs, insects that don't have any wings, or they have fewer wings, or the wings have been modified. All sorts of different issues, or not issues, but differences in these different categories that again make it complicated enough that we don't want you to have to sweat the details. Just take pictures of things that look like bugs and post them on iNaturalist, and we'll sort things out later. Insects go through what's called a metamorphosis. There are 2 kinds of metamorphosis. There's the kind of a metamorphosis where the bug hatches out of the egg and basically looks like a little mini version of the adult and goes through life stages. They have to molt their skin every time they get to a certain size, and so usually those life stages are broken up into pieces called instars. But the simple metamorphosis is just basically growing up, starting out as a little version of the big version. And then there's complete metamorphosis, where you start out with an egg and then you produce a larvae or caterpillar, a maggot, whatever you want to call it, that looks very different from the adult. Usually lives in a different place, has a different feeding pattern, and goes through that larval stage. Sometimes the larval stage may take years. You look at locusts, some dragonfly species, some butterfly species, they actually spend 2 or 3 years as a larva and then only a few weeks as an adult. But eventually they're going to turn into a sort of in-between stage called a pupa. And that pupal stage, they're basically mixing their genes around in such a way so that they come out looking very, very different than the adult. Butterflies do that, flies do that, beetles do that, bees do that. Complete metamorphosis. And then you have critters which are sort of in between. It's hard to say whether this looks like a little miniature version of the adult. This is a mayfly. They're aquatic insects. They live in the water. They have gills in the water, and then they breathe air when they're adults. you know, they have some details that are the same, some details that are very different looking. This was taken by Lee Kane. He's been doing a lot of really impressive work um, with aquatic insects. He's got a little Olympus camera. I don't remember what the letter salad behind the Olympus part is, but it's a waterproof camera. I spent not quite $300 on it, and it's pretty, getting some pretty impressive stuff. And so, in fact, we're going to celebrate his work here with quite a few of these pictures. Here's another aquatic insect. It's a different mayfly. And again, they don't look a whole lot like the adults. They come out very different looking, and yet they don't go through a pupal stage. And so we have these sort of intermediate kind of insects that are going through a metamorphosis that's not quite the simple metamorphosis and not quite the complicated complete metamorphosis. Here's a caddis fly. It looks more like a worm than any kind of fly you're likely to see. Very different looking. Eventually, some of these aquatic insects are going to crawl out of their skin. They molt. Jim Johnson has enough practice with dragonfly molting that he can actually look at the molted leftover skin and tell you which kind of dragonfly it is. I can't do that yet. I have to rely on him to do that for most of the dragonfly exoskeletons that I find. It's a really impressive picture that was taken by Andrew Emlyn of a olive clubtail actually crawling out of that last nymph stage and becoming an adult. It's going to pull its way all the way out, and then it's going to spread its rings, and it's going to fill those up with fluid. You've probably seen pictures of butterflies doing the same things. The wings are all folded up, and they put some energy into spreading their wings and pumping them up, and then they fly off. But the most famous complete metamorphosis critters are the butterflies and moths. This is a caterpillar from a cinnabar moth. It's going to go through 4 or 5 molts as a caterpillar, and again spend weeks as a caterpillar, and then it's going to eventually turn into a pupa, and that pupa is going to open up and produce a cinnabar moth, and cinnabar moth will fly around long enough to mate, lay eggs, and then we'll start the cycle over again. This is a cranefly larva. Craneflies are a member of the true flies, and they're missing a pair of wings. They have 4 wings, but they have changed their rear wings out for those 2 little clubby things that you can see in the back. Those don't actually do any load bearing when the cranefly flies. They're actually for balance. When the wing goes up, those go down, and when the wings go down, those go up. And so it counteracts the motion, remotion, action, reaction, Newton's law thing that basically helps stabilize them so that they can fly in a straight line. Here's another fly. This fly is pretending to be a bumblebee. This is another ambush predator. This one has disguised itself as a bumblebee so that it can sneak up on bugs on plants. Again, it's only got 1 pair of wings because that's the way flies roll. And you can see that little club thing, that little yellow sort of circle is the end of the club thing on the back, modified back wings. Here's a real bee. Real bees have 2 pair of wings, but the wings actually have, they're Velcroed together. And so even though it has 4 pair of wings, or 2 pair of wings, 4 wings, the forewing and the hind wing are actually sort of attached together so they act like a single wing. This is a water scorpion. Andrew Emlyn got this photo. This is a huge bug, and it's entirely aquatic, but it can fly. And it has two pair of regular legs, and then the forelegs have been modified into these grabbers that poke out the front. So the back two pair of legs are for swimming, and the front pair of legs are for collecting prey. I'm going to get to see some flight here. This is Western tiger swallowtail. Bev Halberg got these pictures. I don't know what kind of camera she's using, but it's a pretty cool shot of the Western tiger tails having some sort of dogfight. I'm not sure whether these are two males fighting over territory or it's a male and a female, but it's hard to get flight shots, and it's hard to get flight shots that are this crisp. And so I don't know what camera she has, but it must have been a pretty good shutter speed. Lots of 10-vine June beetles showing up these days. They've been reported by several folks. This is a female here. You can tell it's a female because it has short antennae. If you look at some of the other ones, you'll find that they have big, almost moose-like antennae. Those are the males. They use their antennae to taste the air for pheromones so they can find the females. And so the males have these big antennae, and the females tend to be have smaller antennae. This is a willow calligrapher beetle. David Bailey took this picture. You can see here that the beetles have this modified, the front pair of wings have been modified into this hard shell. When a beetle flies, those forewings flip up, but they don't actually produce any lift. They just flip up and get out of the way so that the back wings can come out and do all the flying. If the beetle can fly at all, many beetles have given up flight altogether, that those forewings have been sort of fused down the middle and have become just a hard shell for protection. That gets us to the end of the slideshow part of all of this. I am trying to keep the video down to under 20 minutes. So we'll cut it off there. And I want to let you know that the comet Nemo-Wise is showing in the night sky. If you're into comets, you probably want to go check that out. It's in the northwest, below the Big Dipper. If you can find the Big Dipper, Dipper has a ladle part and a cup part. And if you drop down toward the horizon from the bottommost star and the cup part, about halfway down, you should be able to find the comet. You can see it if you know where to look, even without binoculars. But it's certainly a better experience if you do use your binoculars. Next week is also National Moth Week. I hope you put in some energy with the moths. All of the moths you find will automatically go into the National Moth Week database without you having to join at all. It will just, iNatural will just automatically pick it all up. And so there's that. I'm going to be doing some real insect work next week. I'm going to go up to Mount Hebo and look for silver spot butterflies. They're currently flying at Rock Creek right now. So I'm going to go up to Mount Hebo and see if I can find some bugs up there. If I see anything, I'll make sure that I put it on iNaturalist. So anyway, have a good week. Look for some moths for National Moth Week, and wear your mask, stay safe, and we'll see you in the field.